some really, really important history to talk about for the next hour or so. This is our usual Saturday 4 o'clock Eastern time, 6 o'clock Eastern time live stream where we talk about whatever you want to talk about, whatever history topics you want to bring up, put them in the chat, and I will get to them at the appropriate time. We're here every Saturday at 6 p.m. Eastern and 4 p.m. Eastern on Sundays. So welcome, and thank you for joining me. Thank you for those of you who waited. I know I'm a little bit late, but again, coming home from an appointment, and we go over a speed bump right now. So anyways, this is the Friendly Neighborhood History channel, and if you like and subscribe, you are officially part of the Friendly Neighborhood History channel. You are officially a Friendly Neighborhood Historian. We're growing at such a great pace. We have such great supporters and subscribers. We will hit 6,000 hopefully by the end of the year. That's the goal, so that I can say we have a legion of Friendly Neighborhood Historians, literally a legion, 6,000 soldiers in a Roman army. That's the goal by the end of the year. But if you like and subscribe, it's as easy as that. You don't have to pay any money. You don't have to get on Patreon. You don't have to subscribe and follow me on social media. Although my wonderful moderator, Simon the Bunny, has all of my social media handles in the chat, which I have pinned. So if you want to follow me on social media, feel free to do that and go ahead right there. Anyways, so what do we want to talk about history-wise today? And thank you for all the love and fun you guys are showing in the chat. Anyways, I've got anything you want to talk about, anything you want to ask, social studies-wise, history-wise, that's what we're here for. That's what we love to do. We do that every Saturday, again, at 6 p.m. Eastern, and Sundays, 4 p.m. Eastern time as well. So, anyways, and of course, I've got the social media handles in the chat for you guys to check out. So, we're thinking of actually adding a third live stream where it's just me talking about history stuff, because I've always got a bunch of topics, but I've always got a lot of people asking great stuff in the chat. And, excuse me, that's really what we like to focus on. We like to focus on you, what you have to ask for. Throughout the week, you hear me talking about different historical content and topics that are interesting. But every Saturday and Sunday, I like to give back to you by answering questions about history, different historical topics you bring up. So anything you want to bring up, we will cover in the chat. So Simon is asking, who is the most notorious for being late? Lyndon B. Johnson, Franklin D. Roosevelt, or Friendly Neighborhood History? Well, definitely probably the Friendly Neighborhood Historian at this point, because I've been late a couple of times and I'm not even home starting this chat late. But supposedly, I don't know much about FDR. I've heard that about Lyndon Johnson. Lyndon Johnson was notoriously kind of all over the place. He was known for going into restaurants and eating off of other diners' plates, for skinny dipping, kind of a rude guy in the general when you consider it. But an interesting president to pass the civil rights legislation, obviously extremely important, and created the great and the modern foundations of the welfare state in the United States. So thank you for joining us. If you're just joining us, this is the Friendly Neighborhood History channel, and this is our live Q&A. Ask me anything where you get to talk about and ask any historical topic you are interested in. If you enjoy learning about history and social studies, like and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow. Again, the goal is 6,000 by the end of the year. And Simon just started us off by asking about who is the latest. And I think Friendly Neighborhood History takes the title for the latest because we are 15 minutes late, unfortunately. And I'm still not home yet. I'm still driving home right now. But and you guys can probably hear the engine and all of the good stuff roaring. I've got on my face. Well, it appeared a little while ago, and I don't know what to do. I'll probably get rid of it soon. Dermatology. So, anyways, but I've got a few topics I wanted to talk about with all of you, including the foundation of Prussia, the creation of the American legal system, and the three branches of government. So, I hope you all enjoy that. Again, I'm thinking of adding a third live stream so that I can talk about just topics that are interesting to me and not answer questions. However, I really love doing the questions every Saturday at 4 p.m. Eastern and every Saturday at 6 p.m. Eastern and every Sunday at 4 p.m. Eastern. Yeah, definitely fair. Well, I'm not driving. Fortunately, I have a wonderful chauffeur who's driving me around right now. Wanted to take a drive out in the land, get some coffee, and unfortunately for us, our conversation went way past 3 o'clock, so just joining on right now. But thank you for everybody who's joining. If you enjoy learning about social studies and history and social sciences, drop whatever topic you'd like to discuss in the chat, and like and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow. Again, the goal is 6,000 by the end of the year. We're just over 5,000. I thought we wouldn't reach 5,000 by the end of the year, yet now look at us. We're well over 5,000 strong. Friendly neighborhood historians is as easy as liking and subscribing. So yeah, Simon is asking, what were the main reasons to maintain a balance of power? So the way the three branches of government work, oh my God. Oh, I'm sorry, guys. I'm really sorry. I'm seeing just a car turned over on its side. Holy Lord. Ooh, that's nasty. Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, the car's like, so the car usually goes like this, and now it's like this. So, yeah, that's really distracting me right now. And obviously there's police and paramedics. It's just awful. Anyway, so how does the American system, where does that all come from? So obviously in the American system, well, again, I'm not texting and driving. Yes, but thank you for that reminder. Don't text and drive, friendly neighborhood historians. Instead, like and subscribe and follow me on social media. All of the social media handles are put in by my loyal moderator, Simon the Bunny, who I really appreciate his constant attendance and help with all of the work for the channel. So anyways, yeah, but yeah, if don't text and drive, or else you might end up, unfortunately, like that guy I just saw on the side of the road with his car overturned. That's why I always travel with the help of my friendly thank you, chauffeur. Anyways, so that probably will get me banned from YouTube, but yeah, don't text and drive, and certainly don't drink and drive, or vape, or smoke weed, or any of that stuff. Driving high is still a DUI, just reminding y'all. Anyways, so the three branches of government. So obviously in the legislative and judicial, and I am just getting dropped off right now, so give me just a second, guys. In the wilderness, talking about the three branches of government for the American system: the legislative, judicial, and executive, obviously. So where does the American system come from? Obviously, the Americans are moving towards their very notorious election. Nobody knows exactly how it will turn out. Both sides want to claim that they're doing really well and on the precipice of victory. But again, we don't know. And by the way, I hope you enjoy this tour of my front yard. But nobody knows where that's going. So because of that, it's time to reevaluate and revisit where the three branches of government come from and how they all work. Obviously, most people are aware, even in the United States, because Americans are notoriously lazy and don't know much about their civics, that there is a legislative branch, which includes Congress, the House and the Senate, the executive branch, which includes the U.S. President, the Vice President, as well as all of the different federal departments and bureaucracies, and of course the Supreme Court, which includes the judicial branch, which includes the Supreme Court and all the different federal jurisdictions, the appellate court, district courts, all of that. So a lot of people know that, but they don't know what they're supposed to do or how they were set up or why they were set up that way, or where they even came from. And basically, I wanted to give a brief history about that, but if you have any historical topics you would like to bring up as you get this nice little tour of my house, feel free to drop them in the chat. Do I believe in ghosts? Ooh, that's a good one. So again, this is a Q&A, so you get to ask me anything you would want, social studies related, social sciences related, history related, and I'm going to take that question about ghosts as a social science related question. I'm going to say yes, I definitely do believe in ghosts. I believe there's far too much paranormal phenomenon for us to just discount it as hoaxes. So yes, I'm going to just go in kind of a whimsical manner and say yes, I believe that there are ghosts and they exist. I don't know if every single paranormal encounter is with a ghost or with an alien, but yes, I tend to believe that there are ghosts. I don't have a mud floor, but I kind of wish I do sometimes because, you know, log cabins, a lot of U.S. presidents were raised in log cabins, so we've got that going on. And now my chauffeur is joining us in the chat. Welcome, chauffeur. So anyways, my wonderful chauffeur got me home safe and sound. Fortunately, he wasn't texting, sexting, or vaping and driving, so really appreciate that. If you like what I'm talking about, if you like social studies and history and that whole genre, and you want to learn more about it, please be sure to like and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow. My wonderful moderator Simon the Bunny, who is one of the most loyal YouTubers ever, has my handles in the chat. So I really appreciate him and really appreciate all of you guys joining us today. So anyways, I was talking about the three branches of government, the legislative, executive, and judicial. And why do I put them in that order? Because the U.S. Constitution actually puts them in that order. So everybody's obviously really bound up with the U.S. presidential election, and I get this in the chat all the time, people asking about Harris or Trump. Who do you support and why? And I try to be as objective as possible. I do release weekly political content. We are currently at 540. Yes, 5040. Yeah, so trying to grow the channel, 6,000 by the end of the year. That's the goal. If you like and subscribe, you are a friendly neighborhood historian. It's as easy as that. I would love an 1850s reset, except I would die without Wi-Fi. Anyways, so where do we stand with the whole issue of why do I mention the legislative branch first? Where do we stand with the election? Dragula, I will definitely vote for you. You have my vote. Thank you so much. Please be sure to vote for Dragula. Write that in on your ballots wherever you are, even if you're not in the United States. A lot of people tend to think that the U.S. president is in charge of everything, that we are voting, that Americans, and I'm an American, so I say we, but I try to be as objective as possible, that Americans are voting for a dictator, a king, a queen, a ruler, somebody who can make things happen overnight. And that's what they expect to happen when they vote for, most likely, Donald Trump for the Republicans or Kamala Harris for the Democrats, the current vice president and the former president. However, that's not actually how U.S. elections are working. That's not how the founders intended them to work. If you read the U.S. Constitution, you find that, the first article of the Constitution is dedicated to Congress, and it's also the largest article of the Constitution. That isn't an accident. That isn't just happenstance. The founders intended Congress to be the most influential and strong branch of government. The Congress would make most of the laws, and the president would kind of just give his or her tacit approval to those laws. So obviously, there's congressional elections every 2 years. Every single congressional district House member of the United States is up for re-election in his or her district, and some of those districts are like automatic Republican or Democrat no matter what, and some of them are more competitive and interesting. And then every 2 years, 33% of senators in the United States are up because senators get 6-year terms. So every 2 years, about a third of U.S. senators are up for re-election. And the founders meant for Congress and the Senate to have the most impactful part. They were the ones who would make laws. They were the ones who would decide on things. And the House of Representatives represents the lower chamber. It represents the people. It's the people's chamber. Members of the House are younger with less experience. They tend to have fewer requirements on how long they've been a citizen of the United States. And if you've been a citizen for 7 years and you're 25 years of age, you can run for a House of Representatives. You can run for your particular House district. And there's obviously most of the House districts are already done for. Like as soon as the election starts, we know that the Democrat or Republican will win them here in the U.S. You also have Senate races. There you have to be 30 years of old and you have to been a citizen for 9 years. And the founders have designed this intricately and intentionally. They intended for senators to be the more experienced, older batch, just like in the Roman Republic. And most of the American government is structured around the Roman Republic and the Greek ancient Athenian democracy, where the senators were considered the higher class, the more established, experienced, and mature representation. But really, if you read the Constitution of the United States, you find that the Americans really put a lot of stock into their Senate and into their House of Representatives and less stock into the presidency. Now we get to Article 2 and the second branch, the executive branch. So the legislative branch, the House and Congress, they make laws. They write laws, they agree upon laws, they revise laws, and they decide what they think will be best. The House kind of representing individual people from their district, while the Senate representing the whole state. And there's 2 senators for each state. So Delaware, which is one of the smallest states, gets 2. California, which is one of the biggest, gets 2. While California has 52 congressional districts and Delaware has 1. So, but every state gets 2 senators no matter what. And those senators help decide the what's going to go on, and they're considered the upper chamber. So most bills begin in the House of Representatives, and if they pass there, they go to the Senate where they're revised and agreed upon, or maybe they're just agreed upon. If both chambers can agree on the same version of the same bill, whatever it might be, it goes to the President of the United States, and he or she approves the measure. And the President, so that's the second article. The President is not expected to be quite as important and central to American government as modern politics makes it. American politics is tantamount nowadays to sports. I'm on Team Red, you're on Team Blue. I don't like you because you're Team Blue, and I like me because I'm on Team Red. And anyone who agrees with me must be good because they're also on Team Red. And that is the state of American politics today. A lot of people are diehard Republicans and will vote for the Republican no matter who he or she is. And this was a matter long before Trump joined the race. And a lot of people are blue no matter who, red till I'm dead. They will support the Democrat no matter who. And an obvious example of this, and I knew this was a historic election and I would need to cover it as a historian, is when Joe Biden suddenly and surprisingly dropped out of the presidential race, although there was some rumor and speculation that he would do so, and Kamala Harris became the presumptive Democratic nominee. And just seemingly overnight, all of the Democrats switched their allegiance to Harris in an effort to stop Trump and the Republicans. And again, I'm trying to be as objective as possible. I'm not going to tell you who I'm going to vote for. I'm not going to tell you who to vote for. I'm not going to tell you how to vote. I'm going to talk about history. And I knew this election was historic when I saw that change. You don't change horses in the middle of the race, yet the Democrats somehow did it, and they still have a decent chance of winning, maybe as good as a 1 in 2 chance of winning, although Trump seems to have the advantage right now. At least that's my opinion, kind of seeing that as a layman. I'm a professional when it comes to history. I'm a layman when it comes to politics. So anyways, so the president doesn't have the ability to make whatever laws he wants or do whatever he wants. And regardless if Trump or Harris get elected, they're going to rely on Congress passing and signing and agreeing upon legislation, House and Senate, in order to get it to their desk and sign it into law. The president executes the laws. He decides whether or not he will sign a law. And it's never supposed to be about partisan politics. It's supposed to be about, does it follow the Constitution? Is it good for the country? However, this is where we've gotten right now, where people basically feel that the president is going to represent their party and do whatever they want. And no, I'm not going to do a backflip. But if you're just joining us, if you like learning about history, social studies, and the like, I'm talking about little political science and government right now when it comes to the U.S., like and subscribe. It helps grow the channel, and it's so easy to become a friendly neighborhood historian. All you have to do is like and subscribe. Thank you for joining us on this Saturday afternoon, evening, whatever. The president doesn't have endless power, endless political control of the country. That is a made-up notion. That is something that we have seen in recent years as the president becomes more and more powerful because presidents continually rely on their executive orders and that ability to get things done quick and fast and basically almost make laws. President Trump tried to do this with the Muslim ban. A lot of people criticize President Biden for not shutting down the border through an executive order. Presidents are expected to do things through their executive order power, which bypasses Congress. So what do you do? When the president can bypass Congress and Congress can override the veto of a president, how do you determine who's following the Constitution, who's really following the law of the land? Well, that's where we get the third branch of government, the Supreme Court. And today, I do daily Today in History videos. Today is the anniversary of when the Supreme Court basically was founded when John Jay, an American founder who helped form America, he helped make the Treaty of Paris, where the British recognized the American independence and ended the Revolutionary War. He helped write the Federalist Papers, a series of essays which argue for the Constitution. And Washington appointed him the first Chief Justice of the Supreme Court on this day in 1789. The Supreme Court and the federal judiciary, which is founded by Congress. So the Supreme Court is founded by the Constitution. All the other federal courts are approved of by Congress. These federal courts interpret the Constitution and determine whether or not a presidential executive order, a law, anything on the books is constitutional or not, or whether it violates the Constitution. And they're supposed to be the third branch, and they're supposed to be kind of the interpretive power. They're not really determining law. They're not supposed to. They only say whether something follows the Constitution or whether it does not. So the founders were kind of setting up these checks and balances, as we call them, where Congress makes laws, the president approves the laws, and the judiciary, particularly the Supreme Court, decides whether or not people should follow those laws. And that's how the American system works, for better or for worse. It's kind of this complementary system, and it comes from the French philosopher, the French Enlightenment philosopher. Again, the Americans were highly influenced by the French Enlightenment and political philosophy. Comes from the French philosopher Montesquieu, who basically argued that in order to keep the government honest, you needed a separation of powers. Rather than having one group who makes all the laws and can never be stopped, you have three groups. One that makes the laws, one that approves the laws and enforces them, and one that says, hey, don't enforce this law because it's not following our Constitution. So yeah, as Simon is pointing out, ask me any questions on history, but that's a basic summation of how the American three-branch system works. We are just getting started a little late on the draw here today, but I appreciate everybody for joining us. Like and subscribe if you enjoy learning about history and social sciences. We are here every Saturday at 6 o'clock Eastern and Sunday 4 o'clock Eastern. And like Lyndon Johnson and FDR, I was a little bit late today, but I'm glad to have you along for the ride. And if you like learning about history, to become a friendly neighborhood historian, it's as easy as liking and subscribing, and you can become a friendly neighborhood historian. And if you have any topics you want to ask about or bring up, drop them in the chat, and I will be happy to oblige and talk about them. Let's see here. So people are talking about politics a little bit. Flag is saying you don't change the horse in the middle of the race. Is that what you think? OMG. So, yeah, I think that it was a political mistake by the Democrats. I'm not criticizing. I'm not saying I'm voting for Trump. I'm saying it was a political mistake by the Democrats to give up on Biden in the middle of the race just because he did really bad in a debate and clearly has some signs of mental decline. And there's obviously legitimate questions about his mental acuity. It would have been better had Biden said, I'm not going to run again, please support Harris, and there had been an actual Democratic primary. The big issue the Democratic Party is bringing up in this political election, and I don't want to get too political, but I'm going to say this just because I'm an American and I think it's fair. The big issue the Democrats are raising against Donald Trump is that because of January 6th and because of his refusal to accept the 2020 election results, that he is, quote, a threat to democracy. That doesn't look good when you replace your political candidate with someone who didn't get any votes for the nomination. And then you continue with the line that he is a threat to democracy. So yes, you don't change horses in the middle of the race, and the Democrats seemingly had done that. If Harris had been allowed to go through a primary season where she had been able to vet the American people, she might have been able to create a more favorable outlook of who she was rather than seemingly shifting President Biden out of nowhere. To the very last day, I have been told President Biden was arguing that he would stay in the race. The fact that he's not looks kind of bad for the Democrats, especially when they're arguing that they're fighting to save democracy. I'm not saying to vote for Trump. I would never say that on the channel. I'm a historian who looks at things objectively. I am saying politically, from a strategic perspective, which is what I offer on this channel when I do weekly political videos and commentary on my live streams, that doesn't look good for the Democratic Party. I would equally say that former President Trump, refusing to accept the election results unless he wins also looks bad. But at this point, former President Trump has this amazing ability to say horrible things that are really stupid and look good. So I criticize both sides. It's not just one. It's not just the Democrats. Hello, welcome for joining. Hello, thank you for joining us. Welcome. The words used to govern are made for. I don't know what you mean by that. Joey, I agree with you, but I don't know what you're saying. What do you mean we're all slaves? Ooh, Global brings up a really good point. It takes 30 years for accurate history can be written. George W. Bush said that. I don't know if that's true. I think what I'm trying to do here and why I'm discussing political issues, even on the channel, even contemporary history, is because I have this belief that history is an ongoing thing and continues regardless of what's going on. So when I saw President Biden drop out of the political race, and I saw Vice President Harris become the first woman of color to be nominated by either political party, and to have probably a 50-50 shot of becoming the first female and woman of color to become president, I was like, this is a historic election. I need to talk about it. So that's what I decided to do, and that's what I'm doing. This is live. We're always live. We're live every Saturday at 6 p.m. Eastern and Sunday at 4 p.m. Eastern. If you are enjoying what you're hearing and you're enjoying learning a little bit of American history and American political structure, please like and subscribe to grow the channel. So, in my opinion, history is a continual, ongoing thing, and history will continue until the end of time. You are part of history, and so am I. We are part of what's called contemporary history, but in 500 years, it won't be so contemporary anymore. Mortician's asking, give me some historical facts about Vienna. Okay, interesting. So Vienna is the home of Marco Polo, who is the European, the Italian, who went to China and set up contact with the Mongol Empire that had conquered China, the Yuan dynasty as it's called, and he wrote back describing the diversity, the cultural, cosmopolitan nature of the Chinese court, and the riches thanks to the Silk Road. Vienna is a city that is currently actually has a deadline. It has an date of expiration because it is built in the sea, and you have levees, you have it built into the Mediterranean, and it is actually sinking as the Mediterranean rises. So there's some quick historical facts about Vienna. One of the city-states of Italy during the Middle Ages that was actually kind of semi-independent, very reliant on the Pope, and very rich. In fact, despite hating the Ottomans and being sincerely Catholic, after the Ottoman Empire destroyed the Byzantines in the 15th century, Vienna was the first city to make trade agreements with the Ottomans so they could keep trading with the Middle East and the Near East. So some things about Vienna right there. And from an Italian city-state, it was controlled by the Austro-Hungarians, who eventually gave it to the Italians in the 1870s when the Italians were fighting their wars for independence in the sweep of nationalism. Joey's asking, this is a good one, use comparisons to World War II to now, bud. I don't see a lot of World War II comparisons. When I look at the world structure and the different wars going on, I see more World War I-like stuff, because basically you have spheres of influence trying to control everything. You have the United States supporting both Ukraine and Israel, which are smaller satellite states, if you will, and the United States and China both trying to influence different political, geopolitical, and economic interest in Africa. And if one of those things falls apart, you could lead to a war. That's what happened in World War I. Basically, one domino fell over, and then all the dominoes fell over. I talk about this almost every week, seemingly, but you have the Austro-Hungarians declaring war on Serbia, Russia trying to defend the Serbs, so they declare war on Austria-Hungary. Then Germany joins to support Austria-Hungary and had promised them to do so. It's called the blank check. France will protect Russia. Germany knows this, so they attack France first. They go through neutral Belgium, the Battle of Ypres, which is the creation of the trench warfare in the Western Front, which is today is the anniversary of that. Then Britain, seeing the violation of Belgian neutrality, joins France, which surprises the Germans. So you have the creation of the Western Front with Britain and France fighting against Germany, and Germany fighting the Russians on the Eastern Front, which they don't really want to do. So it only takes one domino to fall over. The United States attacking Iran, which might be supported by Russia or China. China attacking Taiwan. North Korea attacking South Korea. And you've got World War III, in my opinion, World War IV, because the 7 Years' War of the 1750s is actually, in my opinion, World War I as a historian. In my opinion, we're less on the ground for World War II. We're more in line for World War I, for a repeat of World War I. Thank you, Mel. I really appreciate that. Thank you for subscribing. If you like, you are a friendly neighborhood historian just by liking and subscribing. I'm going in order. Thank you, Simon. You are such a great moderator. I really appreciate that. It's hard to believe we're already a half hour. I'm going to go a few minutes over just because we started off kind of in chaos, me driving and all of that stuff. Global is asking, define slave. If I am well taken care of, like a sponsor of an artist from wealthy. What do you mean by that? Slave is somebody who works for somebody else without being paid and without being able to quit, in my opinion. And we have slavery all throughout human history in different ways and shapes. American slavery is the first racially motivated slavery, but that's not because Americans are inherently racist. That's because, in my opinion, at least as a historian, when you look at the history of slavery, slavery often was regional. So you have Chinese enslaving other Chinese. You have Egyptians enslaving local peoples of the Middle East. You have Europeans enslaving other Europeans and Africans enslaving other Africans. What the New World was able to do through its technology, through carracks and faster ships that were able to create triangular trade between North and South America and Europe and Africa, is you have racial and ethnic slavery, where Europeans are able to go to Africa and get African slaves and take them to work. And it didn't start off ethnically motivated at all. It became that way because as time progressed, The Europeans, who were promoting ideas of all men are created equal, couldn't justify that while also enslaving the Africans, so they had to believe that the Africans were subhuman. It was a technological advantage that allowed them to go to other continents and enslave first the natives, who they conquered in North and South America, and then the Africans. So that's how I define slave as anyone who works under forced circumstances, who is not paid for their labor and has to do it. Mortician is asking, give me some historical facts about Graz. What do you mean by Graz? I don't know what you mean. That's weird that it's not on the top, because I see that we're live. Do I know how delegates work? What do you mean by, JB, what do you mean by delegates? Do you mean like electoral delegates? Do you mean like delegates in a nomination process? Because I do. Sam is asking, why would you vote for either one of these clowns? So I think a lot of people around the world and in America seem to kind of be holding their nose and voting against somebody. People seem to be voting against Trump or voting against Harris. There's a lot of people who love Trump, and there's a lot of people who love Vice President Harris. And there's a lot of people who love Biden who are supporting Vice President Harris as kind of a coattail effect, even though Biden dropped out of the race. A lot of people in America, and this is something that I've seen since I was a young kid, being an American, seem to think we're being run by idiots. Both of these people are stupid, and no one should support them. Now, I'm not going to go that far. I'm going to say that that's a common theme in America, but the people who often say that will go into the voting booth, even if they're holding their nose, and vote one way or the other. Hello, welcome. Thank you for joining us. I'm kind of catching up with the chat here. I'm just going in vertical order of questions, but if you have a topic you want to talk about, social studies related, social science related, I'm here for you. This is what we do every Saturday at 6 p.m. Eastern and every Sunday at 4 p.m. Eastern. So thank you for joining us. If you want to be a friendly neighborhood historian, it's as easy as liking and subscribing. I'm not the friendly neighborhood historian, but you could be if you like and subscribe. Hello, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Umair Irfan is asking history of Pakistan, so I'd be happy to discuss that. So, India, as far as we know it, the Indian civilization that occupies the Indian subcontinent begins with what's called the Indus River civilization, which is the first major civilization in that region of the world, and the Indus River is actually in Pakistan. So the two rivers that define Indian history are the Indus and the Ganges, which is actually in India. So the Indus River people, who are the first people who inhabited the Indian subcontinent, is actually in modern-day Pakistan. So you could say that Indian history, to some extent, begins in Pakistan. This is why people in India do not want to be called Indian. They want to go back to being called Bharat, because the Pakistani heritage of the Indus River civilization. Pakistan is not the same as India, although there's a very little ethnic difference between the people of India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. These three regions are carved up by the British after their occupation ends in the 1940s based on religious differences. You have a large number of Muslims in Bangladesh and Pakistan, as opposed to a huge number of Hindus, an overwhelming majority of Hindus in India who have lived under British and Muslim rule for centuries. And basically, the British give India back to the Hindus while allowing Pakistan to become an Islamic country. And therefore, you have the tensions, starting with the 1947 partition of the Indian subcontinent by the British, between the Pakistanis and the Indians that continue to this day. So, Pakistani history, in some ways, is the history of the Indian subcontinent. If you look at the Mughal Empire, the Delhi Sultanate, the empire of the Guptan Empire of Chandragupta, the Mauryan, that's what they're called. Those empires are those kingdoms, empires, whatever you want to call them, sultanates. Those are started in Pakistan and then come to occupy a huge amount of land in the Indian subcontinent. And the British controlled both Pakistan and India during their time. And if you want to say so, the Indian history, to one large extent, begins with the Indus River people in Pakistan. Tanuki is asking, what do you know about Switzerland? Not a huge deal. I know Switzerland's history in recent history. Obviously, everyone knows Switzerland as a neutral country between, kind of in this precipice between Italy, France, and Germany. And most people in Switzerland speak all three languages or both, whatever you want to say. Switzerland plays a huge part in the Protestant Reformation, and maybe that's what defines its national heritage. It's obviously kind of this neutral country known for its economic power and its military prowess, and it remains neutral in World War One and World War Two, all of these things. During the Protestant Reformation, Switzerland is the home of the Calvinists, of the Reformed Protestants under people like John Calvin and Ulrich Zwingli. Switzerland kind of has always been this middleman that doesn't want to get involved in other European affairs. French Calvinists flee to Switzerland, like John Calvin, because they don't want to deal with the French who are persecuting Protestants. So Switzerland is beautiful. It's a gorgeous country. If you ever look up videos about Switzerland, it's just idealistic to live in. It's just so pretty. I love Lake Geneva. I love seeing the mountains. I love seeing just the bountiful grasslands and beautiful lakes. I would live in Switzerland if I could, but it's a country that is known mainly for its neutrality in many wars. And its rich Protestant history. So Tanuki, if you're still here, that's what I know about Switzerland. I don't know a lot about it. I know that it's kind of a republic, not really a monarchy, and that it's really formed in that late medieval, early modern period. So Tanuki, I hope I'm doing justice to Switzerland. If you know anything more, please drop it in the chat. I'm always learning from these things. And if you're learning from what I'm talking about, please be sure to like and subscribe. It helps the channel grow and become more dominant. Again, the goal is to create a legion, 6,000 subscribers by the end of the year. Global is asking, if you wrote an autobiography, what would be the title? Boy, that's a good question. I like that. That's very personal. History Matters. Again, a great channel on YouTube, by the way. Go and subscribe to History Matters. They did not pay me to say that. They are one of the best, but I agree with them 100%. If there's any tagline I could go, if it's that History Matters. I don't know where that comes from. I don't know where that term comes from. Let's see, catching up with the chat a little bit. Yeah, global. The Pope does have something to do with slavery. There's definitely a lot of Catholics who condone slavery, but from the earliest days of the enslavement of the natives following into the enslavement of the Africans, the Vatican's official position, although not one that they often carried out, was being ad contra slavery. They were against slavery. The Pope condemned the early enslavement of the natives by the Spanish. And if you read the history, most of the priests and missionaries that came over from Spain and Portugal and other parts of Europe sought to condemn slavery and condemn the practice of enslaving either the natives or Africans. I want to know where the city is, the city of Graz. Ooh, this is a great question. Could you please provide me with information about the history of European slavery? So if you're asking what I think you're asking about, European slavery really begins with the Portuguese trading with the African, probably the Kingdom of Congo, and the Africans, in one of their agreements, gives them several slaves. The Europeans don't have any recourse to condemn slavery, and that's where slavery kind of all starts, and they become addicted to slavery, so much so that they starve the African kingdoms of their people, leading to a depopulation of Africa, which will lead to its weakening and its eventual subjugation and colonization by the Europeans. The Europeans themselves have been enslaved mostly by the Muslims from the Ottoman Empire. This is in the Balkans and southeastern Europe, places like Greece and Kosovo and Serbia. Many Slavic peoples were enslaved. But the truth of the matter is that Europeans joined the slave trade kind of seeing it as a way to make themselves wealthier while not paying their labor. And it just seems like a win-win because they can get slaves from Africa. The African kingdoms are more than willing to exchange slaves with them, and they can use these slaves and never have to pay them or let them go. And millions of slaves are brought to South America and Central America. About 400,000 are brought to what is now called the United States. And by the time of the Civil War, 4 million of them are living in, the descendants of slaves really, are living in the American South. So that's a brief overview of it. Basically, the Europeans engaging in slave trade was a way to get themselves richer and to get cheap labor. Mortician, no, I am not diagnosed. You are not the first person to think that, though, but I am not officially diagnosed. And I take it as a compliment because I have so much appreciation for those who struggle or conquer with different diagnoses of autism along the spectrum. Who is going to win the election? So this is something that I was just talking about with when it comes to the presidential election. I mentioned it a few minutes ago. I think that right now, as I look at everything, former President Trump has the advantage. I think he's had the advantage throughout this year. I think that Vice President Harris has done a good job at cutting into his advantage since President Biden dropped out of the race. If I were to call it right now, I would say Trump wins. Maybe not even the popular vote, but he might win like he did in 2016, becoming the second president to win 2 non-consecutive terms and the only president to never win the popular vote, but to be elected to 2 terms. So that might very well happen to former President Trump. I don't know. It's very possible that Vice President Harris becomes the first black woman to be elected president of the United States. But I'm right now, if I were forced to bet, the poly market, I don't know if you guys have seen that. I actually probably will place a bet on that. I would say President Trump is probably going to win. I will do one of those election maps right before the election, but I'm trying to remain as objective as possible. I'm not saying I want President Trump to win. I'm saying what I think is going to happen. Yeah, Global. I agree. Slavery was definitely bad. I would argue that the slaves brought some level of economic prosperity to the American South and other places. However, they did not bring long-term success. And what I mean by that is, if you look at the American Civil War in America in the 19th century, the North and the Western areas were far more prosperous, ingenious, and innovative than the South. The South was kind of backwards, and they kind of relied on those large plantations. So I think, like Lincoln argued, they were handicapped by slavery, and that at the end of the day, slavery ended up hurting them more than it may end up helping them. Taylor, I'm sorry. Did I skip past your question? What was your question? I didn't mean to skip past it. I apologize. Please ask it again, and I will be sure to answer. Yes, Global, I agree. Migration is a constant. Thank you. I really appreciate that. If you really think I'm smart, if you really like what I'm talking about, if you like learning more about history, like and subscribe. We're here every Saturday at 6 p.m. Eastern and Sunday at 4 p.m. Eastern. What were you asking about Islamic, Taylor? Thank you for respecting my channel. What about Iran? I'm Persian. What do you want to know about Iran? I'm willing to talk about Iran and its history. Obviously, Iran, throughout most of its history, has been known as Persia. It is the main Shia Muslim country in the world, mainly because the Safavid Empire in the 1500s basically declared they were the direct line successors of Muhammad and established Iran as a Safavid country. It wasn't known as Iran until the 20th century, and that's because the Europeans, particularly the British, I think it's the British, who occupied Iran during its mandate after the World War I, basically said that Iran was the land of the Aryans, like the Aryans who had migrated through Eastern Europe and Turkey, the Indo-Aryans who settled in India, and Aryan peoples who settled in Persia. The Europeans were always trying to find out ethnically who these people actually were, and that becomes the Aryan land or the Iranian land. I don't know if history repeats itself. I think it rhymes a lot, like Mark Twain said. Hello, welcome from Pakistan. Good to see you. Thank you for joining. I hope you're still here, Master. Apartheid. Ooh, good question here. So apartheid is so I always used to think that apartheid was what the British set up because the British occupied South Africa, but basically South Africa's history is kind of all over the place because of colonialization. There are different African groups, most notably the Zulus, who are really, really aggressive and violent people, but very powerful, and they fight with the Dutch and the British to control their land. The British beat the Dutch and their African allies in 2 different wars called the Boer Wars. And when the British leave South Africa, they set up a government run by the Dutch settlers there, and that government practices apartheid, which is similar to American segregation, where Africans and whites cannot go to the same schools, they cannot use the same facilities, and the whites are considered to be morally and ethnically superior. And so that creates a system of apartheid. And many Africans and liberals fight against this. Nelson Mandela and the African National Congress is formed specifically to destroy apartheid, and many whites and Dutch in South Africa want to uphold it. Many countries protest Africa. They have sanctions against Africa in the 1970s, 80s, and 90s because of this. And eventually, F.W. Clerk, who was actually the president of South Africa, he's a Dutchman who supported apartheid. The Dutch in South Africa were known as Afrikaans. He's an Afrikaan. He supports apartheid. He changes his mind and turns against apartheid. And with Mandela, they both work to end apartheid, and eventually Mandela becomes president. So it's similar to American segregation against African Americans, where they couldn't use the same facilities, get the same education, or work in the same fields. So just a quick history there of apartheid. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. If you're enjoying what you like hearing about, please be sure to like and subscribe. I'm from Algeria. Welcome. So good to have you from Algeria. That's really wonderful. Such an amazing country. I've often found a huge fascination with countries that have a history of African or Native or Middle Eastern and French. And the French really did everything they could to hold on to Algeria because they believed that Algeria was second to France in their scope of their empire, more so than any other African or Asian country they happened to control. Do I dislike the CCP? You mean the Chinese Communist Party? I'm not a big fan because I'm not a big fan of any totalitarian system. I asked if Taylor, I'm sorry. I asked if history has ever seen mass Islamic migration. Islam's interesting. We don't see huge migration except through more militaristic means during the century of Islamic conquest. So after Muhammad died, you can actually label it 632 to 732, the century of Islamic conquest, in which they conquer the Islamic armies, sultans, caliphs, and eventually what's called the Umayyad Caliphate, which succeed Muhammad, conquers all of the Maghreb, North Africa, huge amounts of Anatolia, which belongs to the Byzantines. They conquer all of Israel, which also belonged to the Byzantines, and they get all the way to Spain. They're eventually turned back by the French and Charles Martel at the Battle of Tours in 732. That's Islamic migration, but more by force. The Islamic migration we are seeing into Europe now is the first peaceful migration of Islam, perhaps in its history. Most, except if you consider Islamic migration through trade into West Africa, which large amounts of trade and wealth and Arab traders into West Africa help influence the Africans in that region to become Muslim, such as Mansa Musa and the Mali Empire in the 12th and 13th century. So mass Muslim migration into Europe without the sword, this is anomalous. This is new. Riley is saying, can you talk about 9/11 and Bush? I mean, I've talked about 9/11 before on the channel. Basically, not Saddam Hussein. He had nothing to do with 9/11, yet the United States invaded his country anyways. Osama bin Laden, the leader of Al-Qaeda, organized the attacks. Osama was working and being defended by the Taliban government, which was a radical Islamic government in Afghanistan, although Osama ended up living in Pakistan, which is where the U.S. hunted him down under President Obama in 2011. And Osama orchestrated these attacks, recruiting terrorists from Egypt and Saudi Arabia and Yemen and other areas, 19 hijackers who hijacked 4 different planes. 2 of them crashed into the World Trade Center in New York, attacking the American economy. One of them crashed into the Pentagon, attacking the American military. And another one, which was probably targeted for either the White House or the Capitol, crashed into a field in Pennsylvania because it was re-hijacked by the Americans, Flight 93, in a field in Pennsylvania. So that's 9/11 in a quick discussion. People have often said that Bush did 9/11. I don't believe that's true. I don't see any historical evidence for it. I'm not putting it past a world leader to lie to his people and manipulate them, which Bush, I think, certainly did, especially by saying there were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq and the U.S. needed to invade Iraq. I think that was a disastrous decision. I think history will prove me correct about that. But that doesn't mean that he orchestrated terrorist attacks on his own country. I scream as loud as I can. I'm screaming historical facts to you, and hopefully you're liking and subscribing. Let's see here. Simon is asking, how did the policies of Otto von Bismarck contribute to the unification of Germany in the 19th century, and what role did Prussia play in the process? Well, Prussia is Germany. Technically speaking, when you consider Germany as a modern state, and you consider the creation of Germany in the 19th century, which is one of the topics I wanted to discuss on the live stream, so I'm glad Simon brought it up. Prussia was created by Germany. Germany was created by the Prussians basically forcing all the integrating all the German states into themselves and pushing Austria out of the equation in the mid to late 19th century, and eventually creating a German empire with the Prussian king at the helm, Kaiser Wilhelm I. His son, Kaiser Wilhelm II, would push Otto von Bismarck out of the way and basically take Germany down its own route in the lead up to World War I. So Germany is created in a sweep of German nationalism, which is dominated by the Prussian peoples. Thank you for the reply. Yeah, you're very welcome. It might be for oil. You're asking, can you tell me which is the oldest civilization that still exists today? I think China and India kind of are neck and neck for that. If you learn about Chinese history, you find that China was doing amazing advanced things such as writing with paper and having an empire long before the Europeans ever dreamed of having it. In the 1st and 17th centuries. In the 1st century AD, it's a tie between the Han Chinese dynasty, which creates the Silk Road, which trades all over the Near East and Central and South Asia, and the Roman Empire. And the 17th, and at least I'm assuming you mean the 1st century AD, and the 17th century, 1600s. I would say it's tough. France is pretty much up there. The Ming dynasty in China, through its treasure fleet, has become pretty powerful. But I have to go with the Spanish Empire, which dominates North, Central, and South America, as well as having a large empire in the Caribbean, and they dominate all the cash crops that are flowing through there. So, yes, and thank you, Simon. We are in the last 10 minutes, so if you have any questions, ask what you'd like. Farouk is asking, why did they kill Saddam Hussein? So I deal with contemporary history. I don't try to talk about politics too much, and I know I've talked about that a lot on the channel today, so I appreciate you bearing with me. But why did they kill Saddam Hussein? I think they killed Saddam because there was a really, historically speaking, as a historian, I see this trend in American geopolitics that basically believes if we can get rid of dictators that support terrorism and we can implement democracy in different portions of the Middle East, everything will go fine. It seems to have been a chaotic mistake. However, it seems to have been the policy of the late 20th and early 21st century. And I think the reaction of that is punish Saddam for his human rights violations and kill him. So that's why they killed Saddam. Yes, Prussia is German and Germany is Prussia. I wouldn't say it's only Prussian. Germany is only Prussian, but the Prussians are the one that unite all the German people and basically create the German state in the late 18th century. And yes, quite a bit of Poland. Basically, if you actually read the history closely enough, Poland, which is considered insignificant when you look at German history, actually allows Prussia to be created out of what's called the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth in the late 17th century, and that Commonwealth will become the Prussian state, and you'll see people like Frederick the Great and Kaiser Wilhelm I and Otto von Bismarck, and then later Kaiser Wilhelm II, which will become the German Empire in the late 19th century. Spain did a lot through slavery, yes. They definitely became very powerful through slavery, first of the natives, then of the Africans. And if you do not want to be enslaved to bad history and bad knowledge, like and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow. It's as easy to become a friendly neighborhood historian is really easy, guys. All you have to do is like and subscribe. I'm trying to hit 6,000, a legion of friendly neighborhood historians by the end of the year. What region do you think was the place of first civilizations of humans? I think that you've got several. I think that humanity, we're told by scientists, really begins in Africa, but the first major civilizations, you've got the Mesopotamians creating cities, 4000 BC. Those are really when history begins. I've often said history is about ideas, but when you look at history in a definitional sense, you look at people living in cities and writing about stuff, and you see that in places like Mesopotamia and the Sumer region of the Fertile Crescent in Mesopotamia. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm getting a new phone, and that'll hopefully clear that up. And I'm also getting a tripod to study everything. So hopefully tomorrow we have some of those things. USA just keeps making mistakes. The USA is never punished because when you are the strongest power in the world, it's hard to punish you. Yes, I agree, Taylor. Is it true that Mansa Musa was the richest person? Yeah, a trillionaire, probably. Far richer than Musk. That's how I see it, at least. So we are coming up on 55 minutes, close to an hour. We're going to call it right here, actually, guys. I will be back tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern. If you like what you heard and you love learning about social studies and history, be sure to like and subscribe. I will take one more question. India versus Pakistan. I think they're both great and they're both interesting and they're both interconnected. I will take one more question if you guys want to drop it into the chat, but we're going to actually end a few minutes before my hour long, although we are well over 4 o'clock, but we started late, so sorry about that. But like and subscribe, and I will see you guys tomorrow at 4 p.m. unless anyone has other topics that they want to bring up. I don't want to say which one is better. I think they're both amazing, and I think they're very similar throughout their history. I think the major difference between India and Pakistan today is one is Muslim majority and one is Indian majority, and that's how the British did it when they divided up the countries in 1947. What ancestry do I have? I'll answer that question, a nice personal question that's not too personal. I am Irish, Italian, and Russian. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you guys liking and subscribing. You are officially a friendly neighborhood historian, Maria. And thank you so much for joining us today. We will see you tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern. Follow my social media handles. They're pinned in the chat. Thanks to my wonderful moderator, Simon the Bunny. I really appreciate you, Farouk. I really appreciate you, 60. I really appreciate you. I'm Maria. I will see you guys tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern. Thank you for joining us. Even though we started with a car ride at the beginning, we have had a great chat and some really great questions. Take care and have a great Saturday. Have a good one. Bye-bye.